So the goal of my talk today is basically give you an overview of long-lived particles and at the LHC, and with focus on the experimental signatures of these exotic states. So let me start by defining what a long-lived particle is. So if we think about the standard model of particle physics, our world is full of them. You can think in this spread of particles as a function of mass and the proper decay distance. In the standard model, we have very short-lived particles, such as the Higgs or the Z boson, for instance. This means that these are produced and then immediately decay after being generated, for instance, as a part of proton collisions. They decay very quickly to other standard model states. On the other extreme of the plots, we can think of the electron or the proton, in which, in this case, their stability is protected by symmetry. We can think of conservation of electric charge or baryon number. And there is a spread of particles in between. We can think of the muon, that's also a long-lived particle. It can travel order meters in particle detectors. And this is because its decay is it has a heavy mediator in the decay chain, which is the W boson. So you see that the presence of conserved or approximately conserved symmetries, small couplings, heavy mediators in decay chains, these are theoretical arguments that can happen in our BSM constructions. So why shouldn't a more exotic sector of particles share this same structure, a spread in lifetimes? There really is no reason. We do expect plenty of long-lived particles beyond the standard model. And I put here some let's say, top-down motivations that guide our construction of theories: dark matter, baryogenesis, neutrino matter, neutrino masses, or naturalness. We construct theories in order to explain these open issues, or hopefully one theory can explain all of them, and you can classify them. So here I give you a brief umbrella-like theories with specific models right next to them: SUSY-like theories, Higgs portal, gauge portal, dark matter or heavy neutrinos. And if you systematically classify which classes of models can give rise to long-lived particles, this is something that we did for the LHC LLP white paper, long-lived particle community. So there is a very strong motivations to start thinking of systematically building a program at the LHC to systematically cover corners of parameter space in all of our BSM constructions. Now, in this talk, I would like to give a few examples on the phenomenology, because this is where I live. I like to think of novel collider signatures, identify key features of these theoretical models that will allow us to distinguish them at particle experiments. And the experiment covers most importance, because this is the experimental collaborations at CERN are actually the ones hunting the new particles in the data. And for long-lived particles, these are searches that are very hard to do from the experimental point of view. So model reinterpretation for us phenomenologists is of great importance. The reason for this, well, there are many theoretical models, much more models than experimental analysis currently being performed. So one should really careful understand what are these signatures, how are the experiments providing the information for us to really reinterpret these results in the context of different models. So this is the way I like to think about how to motivate a theory and how to actually connect with the experimental search. Now, where may the new physics be hiding? And this is a question that we started to answer from the long-lived particle community point of view. Maybe the new physics is too exotic. It has displaced or delayed signatures that we are not optimally looking for them. So we can design a program at the LHC based on lifetime. When you define an experimental search, you think about the new physics particle mass, for example, the energy, the quantum numbers of these particles. But really, up until recently, the lifetime as a fundamental property of these new BSM states has not had the importance it should. So this is something that we try to systematically do in our white paper, searching for LLPs beyond the standard model at the LHC, which basically has a community of theorists and experimentalists trying to cover more model and signature space. And this is the so-called lifetime frontier. And I stole this slide from James Beecham, which is the leading Atlas experimentalist in these efforts. The vast majority of the LHC experimental analyses are basically targeting two extremes of this plane. So we can think of the mass of the new physics X, a new particle, and its lifetime. Most of the searches are optimized to look for particles that are either very prompt or they're completely stable for the detector scale. So basically a discovery could be hiding anywhere in the green circle. And this is what motivates long-lived particle efforts worldwide. I show you an extract here of our white paper where we basically develop a set of simplified models focusing on these umbrella-like theories that I showed you before, and provide recommendations for the experiments on how to present these results. I was particularly involved in the editorial chapters of these two on these two efforts, so this is why I highlight them. There's also new dedicated experiments that are currently being approved at the LHC, and this is something that Ravinda Mohapatra mentioned in his talk yesterday. There is this phaser experiment that was approved at CERN to look for light long-lived particles being produced in the forward region. So new experiments are being built to search for these states. Also, CERN has also, we believe, based on our long-lived particle community efforts, now they have a newly working group dedicated to basically systematically explore the lifetime frontier and all of the experimental challenges for looking for these states at LHC experiments, and other initiatives worldwide as well, such as the SNOWMAS US initiative puts long-lived particle signatures at the top of their priorities. So really long-lived particles is being the cutting edge of LHC physics, and we haven't seen any new physics after the discovery of the Higgs boson, so we are still looking for it hardly at the LHC. And the LHC, as you know, collides protons most of the time, and the experiment is designed for these proton bunches to collide in dedicated experiments where we have placed detectors. And I show you here a picture of Atlas and CMS, where you can see that the detectors are quite complex. The technologies here is based on several subdetectors. So we first have inner trackers, and on the outermost part, we have calorimeters, for example, that are designed to reconstruct energies of the particles. And these colored lines here are the tracking information for charged particles. So when we think about what are the standard signatures, and by signatures, I mean, what are the objects, the observables that experiments are actually able to reconstruct? We think about muons, electrons, particle jets. If you know everything that's going on in your event, you can reconstruct this quantity, meson transverse momenta, just by momentum imbalance. But everything here with standard signatures is being produced from the same star where the proton-proton collision happens. Now, if you have a particle that can travel macroscopic distances before decaying, that means that you will have more exotic decay patterns. So for example, you have a particle that travels order millimeters or centimeters inside your inner trackers. Then you will see a displaced vertex inside the inner trackers. You have the track information necessarily to reconstruct that point where all those tracks are coming from. If your particle travels order meters, you can see these displaced vertices in the muon chambers. If you have a colored long-lived particle, and you can reconstruct a particle jet that appears somewhere in your calorimeter, emerges, as opposed to a standard prompt jet signature. So there are several exotic signatures that can arise from several models. And in this talk, I would like to focus on two of them motivated by dark matter and neutrino masses. And for neutrinos, I would like to discuss displaced vertices, and for dark matter, disappearing or charged tracks. Now, LLPs, from now on, is a beyond the standard model particle that gives up all of its energy or decays to some standard model states anywhere in your detector acceptance. So what long-lived it means it also will depend on the experiment you're thinking about. So here I will focus on the LHC, like I said, in these two studies, sterile neutrinos coming from the type 1 CISO model that will provide you with displaced vertices, and dark matter coming from the decay of a charged LLP in the context of a triplet scalar dark matter model. And this work was recently accepted for publication. So the CISO mechanism, this is also something you heard yesterday from Jose Valle's talk. Maybe we have new neutrinos, heavier than the neutrinos in the standard model. That explains why the masses of the neutrinos in the standard model is so little by the CISO mechanism, just like I show you in this GIF, the gain the CISO. Now, this new sterile neutrino can have a large lifetime for if it has a mass of the order of the electroweak scale. So these guys can be produced in proton-proton collisions by the decays of W bosons, and then it can decay to a W and a muon, for example. Now, the neutrino mixes with the standard model neutrinos. So the large lifetime can be parameterized by this mixing mass matrix and the mass. So you see that for relatively low values of the mixing, and let's say order GeV below the W boson mass, this proper lifetime can be of order of millimeters. So you can reconstruct this decay pattern by a displaced vertex, and that means a vertex that is macroscopically, let's say millimeters, further away from the proton-proton interaction collision, which is this yellow dot. You can reconstruct this high mass, high track multiplicity displaced vertex, and this is the smoking gun signature if there is in nature, for instance, a sterile neutrino with GeV scale masses. So this is a work that we did in 2008 with my collaborators, Juan Carlos Elo and Martin Hirsch, where we basically showed the potential of this search strategy at the LHC with displaced vertices. You can see that with the displaced vertex search, we can constrain portions of the parameter space that other LHC searches and even other experiments cannot. And this is something very nice because in 2019, Atlas did this displaced vertex search, and our projections for higher luminosity, which is these blue and red lines, nicely follows this trend already set by Atlas. So this really puts displaced vertices as a key collider strategy to maybe understand the unknown mechanism behind the origin of neutrino masses. We can also see...
Giovanna, sorry,
yes.
You have 2 minutes left.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so then I can show you a little bit of dark matter. Recently, we studied this model of triple scalar dark matter in which you add extra electroweak multiplets to the standard model with a Higgs portal-like coupling, this A2. Now, the new particles inside your multiplet, we have a charge sigma and a neutral sigma, which can account for the dark matter we observe in our universe. Now, at the 3 level, the masses of these states inside the multiplet is actually 0, but if you include electroweak relative corrections, there is a small mass difference and of order 160 MeV, and this gives rise to sigma being a charged long-lived particle. And you can reconstruct this charge sigma by looking for disappearing charge tracks. Because this guy will decay most of the time to a charged pion and a neutral particle, which is the dark matter. But this charged pion, because of the small mass difference, it has a small PT, small transverse momenta. So you cannot reconstruct it really inside the trackers. So this is why we say that it's a charge that disappears. So this circular lines corresponds to the tracker's modules. So you will have a signature of different hits in your detector. And this stuff will decay to something that is too soft to be reconstructed and something neutral. So you see a track that suddenly disappears. Now, in the context of dark matter, these collider searches are very important because there is complementarity of the LHC reach compared with direct detection experiments. So in our paper, we show projections of the exclusion that we can get with this disappearing charge structures, we basically reinterpret the ATLAS results, which were done in the context of supersymmetric models, to this real triple scalar dark matter model. And there is power to exclude this model at the LHC with 3000 inverse femtometer, we can reach 800 GeV. Now we also projected this search for a future 100 TeV collider, the FCC, and of course the reach goes up. We are able to exclude triplet masses of 3 TeV, and this nicely complements what you can do with direct detection experiments, as you can see in this plot. So these are just 2 examples of the power of unknown physics. How are we searching for new physics at the LHC? And I wanted to finish by showing you this slide. So if we think about where the unknown physics lies in this energy and interaction strength, the standard model lives here. So not so high electroweak scale energies and not so little interaction strengths, but there is a whole triangle here that we are intending to explore. And the fact that the lifetime frontier can basically is transversal to all of the strategies, future colliders, or intensity frontier-like experiments is what's really puts my interest, my research interest in the lifetime frontier. We can explore the intensity frontier as well as the energy frontier. And in this talk, I just gave you 2 examples of dark neutrinos and dark matter. So new physics might be hiding. We should look for it everywhere, in every corner of parameter space, even if these searches are hard to do and hard to simulate. So the lifetime frontier is the cutting edge of LHC physics. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks a lot, Giovanna, for the nice talk, and also for reminding us that it's most useful to experimentalists if we propose models whose signatures are actually measurable.
Exactly.
Are there questions to Giovanna? From the comments, I take it that Marcelo wanted to raise his hand. Is that true?
Yes, thank you, Giovanna. I liked it very much. Concerning the possible existence of long-living particles, I mean, there should be a symmetry that will protect the existence of such particles. Do you have any idea, or the community, which kind of symmetries would be responsible?
So I mentioned several reasons why one could expect long-lived particles. So in the context of symmetries, if you have a conserved symmetry, then of course, then you reach the point of stability, right? But there are models where, for example, I can think of SUSY-like theories in which you have this R parity violation. So you violate R parity, and then you have a long-lived neutralino, for example, that can decay via this non-zero RPV coupling. So the smallness of that coupling gives rise to long lifetimes. That's one example.
Okay, thank you very much.